Hi, I'm Daniel Fisher here at Sweetwater Sound, and today I'm really excited to show you the Korg OPSIX. It's an altered FM synthesizer. So I know that some of you, when you hear the words FM or frequency modulation, are immediately going to shut down this video. I'm asking you to hold on, because even though a lot of people think that FM is hard to understand, and other people also think that FM has been cliched in the 80s and early 90s, I think they're both wrong. One, because FM is actually not that bad once you understand the basics, and there really is no better tool than this to show you the basics because of how they laid it all out on the front panel here. Brilliant. And the other is, in terms of cliches, one, like I always say, cliches are cliches for a reason because they work. But you can get so far beyond those cliched electric piano sounds and tinkly sounds, especially because it's not your standard 6-operator FM. And one of the reasons is because of that filter at the end of the chain. That allows you to do more subtractive synthesis. That's the kind of synthesis you're used to on a standard analog synthesizer. And so it gives you more tools that way, but it also has different ways of creating sounds other than FM, which are ring modulation, which is really AM or amplitude modulation, and wave folding, which lets you do complex shaping of the waves. And you can even build your own algorithms for the FM, which is really exciting. So there's lots and lots of new things to be discovered here that have never been available before. Now, my first introduction to FM was in the mid-80s. I was stationed in Germany, and a friend and I, who was a really good guitar player, we jumped on a bus and went to the largest music store in Stuttgart. And he went off to the guitar area, and I went to the keyboard area. And I came across this brand new Yamaha DX7. I had no idea what it was. I didn't know anything about it. You know, pre-internet, if you didn't have a color brochure of something, you had no idea it existed. So I didn't know what it was. I walked up to it. I saw the little algorithm charts on the top. I had no idea what that meant. It looked very, very alien to me. But I dialed through the sounds. I loved the electric pianos. I loved some of the melody kind of things. But then I got to the jazz guitar. And all of a sudden, for the first time, I was playing jazz guitar riffs that I just had never been inspired to play before. And it was a very natural feel to me. And like right away, I decided I am going to get one of these someday. And I did within that year. The cool thing, though, was after I got on the bus to go back to our base, the other guitar player said, "Man, did you hear that guitar player?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't hear a guitar player." He's like, "That dude was burning," you know, and it was me on keys, and I had to convince him that that was actually me. So that was my first experience with FM, and so I was a big fan, and I jumped on board that year. So what makes the OPSIX like the famous 6-operator synthesizer from the mid-80s? Well, obviously, it has 6 operators. It's there in the name. And so that's very much like it, and it has the same envelopes and LFOs that are available and key tracking with the elbow in the middle. And so it's similar enough that you can actually do a SysX dump from a DX7 or a MIDI file of a DX7 dump. You can dump it in the form of 32 patches, which was a bank on a DX7. And it will very closely create the patches, and the only time that it won't is when there's something that's radically different between the architecture of the two. But most of the time you'll get pretty close, and if nothing else, you'll have a really good starting point to then tweak it to get it to the way that you want. And what is it that makes the OPSIX different from a 1980s DX? It's the filter. So that's one huge thing. So after you create your FM type sound, you can then filter it with a filter that you would normally find in a standard synthesizer. And that really opens up the possibilities of what this thing's going to sound like. And it's a lot of filter choices, including low pass, high pass, and band reject. And they have resonance. And then you go into 3 very powerful effects where each effect can have up to 30 different choices. So there's a lot more into creating a finished product that can be very much like your standard FM sounds or very much not like it. Plus, you've got an arpeggiator and a sequencer and a motion sequencer. And I'll show you a little bit about each of those. So like I said, I'm not going to go deep into the science of FM right now, but I do have a series called Synth Clips that are little videos on different aspects of synthesis, and I very much now intend to do some on FM because I now have the perfect demonstration tool for FM. If you have never watched the Synth Clip series, just type Synth Clips and Sweetwater into YouTube and you'll get to all of them. I currently have about 20 of them out. So now let's talk about the OPSIX basic specs. That is, it's a 32-note polyphony keyboard. There are a couple instances where it's 24 notes depending on the mode that it's in. And like I said, it has a filter with lots of choices. It also has 3 effects, and each of those has 30 choices. It's got a 16-note sequencer per patch. And that sequencer not only does notes, but there's also 6 lanes of motion sequencing, so you can have 6 parameters that you're also recording independently that will play back along with that sequence. It also has an arpeggiator with lots of choices of arpeggiator types, and that will latch. It's also got 500 programs, 200 presets, and 300 user, but you can write over everything. And then you also can create favorites. So there's 4 banks of 16 of your favorites that it's just very easy to put in there. All right, so now let's get into the nitty-gritty of FM. And I promise I'm going to make it really simple this time around. I'll get deeper in the Synth Clip episodes about FM. So the first thing I'm going to do is create an initialized patch, or an init. And on this, the way you do it is the randomizer dice, underneath it says initialize, and that means hold shift. Anything written underneath the button. So I hold shift, I hit that, it says initialize all parameters, I say yes. And because this is FM, it should just be a sine wave, because that's typically how FM patches start out. We'll try it. Which it is. And you can see the different algorithms here on the screen, and very cleverly, they chose to represent the numbers like on dice, so that you could see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That really does help instead of trying to squint your eyes and see these tiny numbers. So kudos on that, brilliant. And as I scroll through, I can have different algorithms. And if you look here, you'll see it's just different ways of stacking the blocks. And you say, well, how on earth am I going to know which one I need? Well, that's just a matter of time. And after you play with it long enough, you'll actually start going, oh, I need this or I need that. Or you simply start with one algorithm that has something simple, and then you realize, oh, I need a little more complexity. And then you find an algorithm that's like that, but adds one more block on top of another block. It does get easier after time. And so the most fundamental thing to understand about these operators is that they have one of 2 roles depending on whether they're on the first row or if they're stacked on top of ones that are in the first row. If they're in the first row, like here where I have all 6 of them on the bottom, they make sound that you can hear. Only blocks that are on the very bottom make sound that you can hear. All blocks that are on top of other blocks, they change the tone of the block that's below it. So when a block is on the bottom, we call it a carrier. And the brilliant thing that Korg did to make this all understandable is that they used 2 colors, one to represent carrier, which is the reddish pink, and modulator, which is the purple. And in this case, where I have all 6 operators on the bottom row, which means I can hear all 6 operators, which means that they are all carriers, you can see that all 6 operators 1 through 6 are in pink, and their sliders are in pink. And if I put something on top of that, where you can't hear it, but what it does is change the tone of one of the ones you can hear, it makes them purple. So watch as I go to a different algorithm, and now you can see that this last column over here has an operator on top of another operator. So the top one is a modulator, which changes the tone of the carrier that's below it. So if I pull all 5 of the pink operators down, you shouldn't hear anything because only the pink ones make sound. If all their levels are down, you're not hearing anything, right? Now, if I pull the purple one down as well, but push up number 5, which is the one that's underneath number 6, you should again hear pure sine wave, which you do. And now listen as I start increasing the level of operator 6, which is purple, which means it's a modulator. It's going to change the tone of the one that's underneath it. And FM in a nutshell, in its simplest form, is that the one on the bottom is volume and the one above it is tone. And we could talk all day about numbers and ratios and all that stuff, but really if you just use your ear, you'll fairly quickly get used to what it sounds like as you increase the amplitude of a modulator like this. And you may want even more brightness and what I call FM splatter, where it really goes whoosh, okay? The way you get more is you simply stack more operators above it, so more modulators. And so you have a modulator modulating a modulator that's modulating the carrier at the bottom. And again, only the bottom one is the one you hear, but now it gets a little more complex because you have two modulators. And a long time ago, back in the 80s, they came up with one more way to get even more complex, and that is to use feedback. In other words, if you look here, you'll see a little loop, and what that means is that the output of that modulator is also going back into itself, which is kind of pretending that it has more on top of it. And so that will make something much more complex as well. And now to show you feedback on operator 6, I'm going to have to edit operator 6. And to show you which of the operators you're working on, they have these 6 little LEDs numbered 1 through 6, and you could toggle through them with this operator select button. So I'm going to go to the mode, and right now I'm on operator 1, and I just step through on 6. So up here, and this is another clever thing about this, is when you're looking at the screen, all 6 parameters that are over here are controlled with these 6 knobs in the same position. So it's very easy to look down and see what you're doing. And once again, I've got my operator 5 all the way up so it's at full volume, and I have no tone. In other words, I have no modulation coming from operator 6. Now that's what one operator sounds like. Now, if I wanted to simulate having more operators, but I didn't want to give up my operators, I use what's called feedback. And so here's what it sounds like with some feedback turned up. And like I said, it'll go into FM splatter real quick. But now listen as I sweep operator 6's level, how much different it sounds now that it has feedback instead of when it doesn't. And I'll take the feedback away. And so that is basically what you have as a tool set. And when you're coming from the world of subtractive synthesis, which is your normal synthesis where you start with a waveform with more sound than you want, and then you cut it with a filter, and then you put it in an amp and you cut the volume with an amp, that's subtractive because you're taking away what you don't want. In FM, it's more like you're building what you want and adding what you want. It's not additive synthesis, definitely FM synthesis, but it's adding to the sound instead of subtracting from the sound. The beauty of it, and the thing that makes FM sound so different from regular synthesis, is that on a regular synthesizer, as you're closing the filter, it's like putting a big old wet blanket on all the high frequencies. And then when you're ready, you lift it, whether it's from an LFO or an envelope or velocity or whatever, but it's this big old wet blanket that you're lifting and closing. And if you make a song using only subtractive synthesis, you definitely hear that there's a sameness to all of the patches that makes the song sound like you created this all in subtractive. But with FM, you can have some sound down here, but nothing in the middle, and then these crazy high frequencies up here, and that's a very different sound. Now, usually when people hear a synthesizer that has frequencies that are somewhere, but then a gap, and then frequencies elsewhere, they say, oh, that sounds digital. That's kind of like their cue for it's digital. No, what it really means is that you have tremendous control over whether the harmonics are all in a row, or if you can have pockets of harmonics. That is definitely an indicator of FM. And while there have been many variations of FM synthesizers since the DX7, a lot of them don't use 6 operators. A lot of them use 4 or even 2. And why is that different? And I should say there are ones out there that have 8 as well. I like 6. I've started with 6 and I can do a lot of different things in 6. But when you go down to 4, especially when you go down to 2, now you have the kind of chip that was available for early video games, and you start hearing sounds that sound like early video games. It's having 6 operators that allows me the complexity, plus because some of the operators can be used for hearing and some can be used for modulating, I can have different sounds simultaneously. So I can have a guitar plus the pluck, or a mallet plus the actual impact of the mallet. I can have strings plus the bowing. I can have horns plus the air that rushes into it. And it's that kind of stuff that makes FM very, very different from subtractive synth. Now, the next consideration after this basic demonstration of FM is that you can change the pitch of any of the operators. Now, when you change the pitch on a carrier, or one of the ones on the bottom row that you can actually hear, you're going to be changing the fundamental note. In other words, you're almost going to be transposing. When you change the pitch on a modulator, it's changing which harmonics it's bringing out. And so what you've heard so far is where the frequency of the modulator is the same as the carrier, and we represent that as a 1 times or 1.0 times. In other words, it is the same frequency, and that is this sound. Okay? But if I go into operator 6 and change its pitch from its current ratio of 1.0000, listen to how it really changes what that sound is doing as I increase the level of it. So now it's 2.0. In other words, the modulator is an octave above the carrier, and that sounds like this. Now I'll go to 3. That's a good one for jazz guitar. Okay. Here's 4. You can hear like the Taco Bell bell. And as you keep going higher, now 12 is one that they often use for that little tingy sound that's in an electric piano. And sometimes those go as high as 14. When you're going for a real digital kind of electric piano sound. And you can go all the way up on this one to 32. But you can hear what I'm talking about when I say this does not sound like subtractive synth, because we've got that big fat sine wave on the bottom and then these little tiny harmonics on the top with nothing in between. Until I get really crazy with the modulation. And now with it up, I'm going to change the ratio of pitch again. So at its most basic, what this is you choose the algorithm that you want, which chooses whether each of the blocks are something you can hear or something that changes the tonality of the blocks that you can hear. The levels, which will either change the volume of your blocks on the bottom or the tone of the blocks above them. And then the pitch of each of those, which on the carrier will change the transposition of that particular set of blocks. Or if you change the pitch on the modulator, it will change which harmonics. And that's it. I mean, that's what picks your tone. Now on this one, of course, then you can go to a filter and do additional shaping, and you can go to 3FX and do much more additional shaping. But this is your static sound right here. But now we're going to move it. And this is the part where people get a little bit lost, more so than even the rest of that. And that is that your envelopes are really important in the tonality of this thing, because when an envelope is changing the level of a carrier, it's changing the volume. So that's your dun, right? But when you have an envelope that's changing the amplitude of the modulator, that's how the tone moves. So in other words, that's what it sounds like when you put an envelope on a modulator. This is what it sounds like when you put an envelope on a carrier. So one's just volume, one's just tone. And I could put an LFO on any of those. And so if I put an LFO on a carrier, I'll get tremolo. If I put an LFO on a modulator, I'll get a tone change, not like a filter change, but a little like it, but much more complex than a simple filter opening and closing. And then finally, there's real-time performance control, starting with velocity. This keyboard responds both to regular initial velocity plus release velocity. That's also really important in FM because how you let go of a note changes how the tonality sounds as it's ringing out. So that's a powerful thing as well. And your mod wheel, various sliders, and your sequencing stuff. And then all of those controllers, including the sequencer and the arpeggiator and all the various knobs, all of those now either are playing with the volume of one of the carriers or playing with the tonality of one of the modulators. And so now, instead of using an init, I'm going to just go through some presets and just quickly move the sliders to show you what happens when I move a pink slider, which should do volume for that operator, or a purple slider, which should change the tonality of that operator. And I'm just going to randomly pick from the favorites. I should show you, though, when you're in favorites and you hold shift, you have 4 different banks that are 4 different colors. So for example, now I'm in the 4th bank because of the green, and I'm just going to randomly hit a patch. I got dark stages. Okay. Very cool. And I look down and I can see that I have 5 of the operators on the bottom, which means I'm hearing 5 different things, and that the 5th one has the 6th one on top. So I'm gonna first break this down by pulling all of the pink sliders down, which I know will make this silent. And it did. And I'm going to move each slider up that's pink, and you're going to hear the volume of that operator. Okay. And now when I put that 5th one up, now I'm going to turn up the modulator. And if I push them all back up, so what am I doing with these sliders? I'm changing the level of each of the 6 operators. And when it's pink, that level changes the volume. When it's purple, it changes the tonality. And then up above those are 6 knobs, and those are the pitches. When I change, and I'm going to pull them all down again, except for the first one. When I change the pitch, you're going to literally hear the pitch change. And this is an interesting one to pick because it's using some of the other modes besides pure FM, but the knobs still work the same. And so I go to the next one. Here's volume, and here's what it sounds like when I play with its pitch. And the next one. And the one that's being modulated, the number 5. Now with some of the purple one turned up. Now I'm going to change the pitch of the modulator and listen how its tone changes. So editing a preset that already exists is really as simple as moving these 6 sliders and these 6 knobs until you get something you like and resave it to a new location. It really is that simple. So I'm going to just pick another one. This one has all 6 operators on the bottom, which means if I put all 6 down, it should be silent, which it is. And here are the 6 parts. And I could just mix it to taste. Now let's find one that uses a different algorithm. Here's one. So this one has 3 on the bottom and 3 on the top. And so if I pull the 3 pink ones down, again, it should be silent. And I'll push up each of them. There's that sound. Another sound is similar, probably detuned. And then that sound. So I'll put all 3 up. Now I'm going to play with the 3 purple sliders. play with the pitch of those. And I didn't worry about any of the numbers or anything except what color they were. I knew that the pink ones changed volume and the purple ones changed tone, and that's it. So now I'm just going to go through these as fast as I can, play a bunch of the favorites. I'll launch a sequencer if it has one, and listen for the motion sequence, and I'll move some of the sliders. And I'm not going to tell you each and every time what I'm doing. Just know that when I'm moving pink, I'm changing the volume of something. When I'm moving purple, I'm changing the tonality of something. And when I'm moving the knobs, I'm changing the pitch of either the carriers or the modulators. Now, one really cool thing about the sequencer, and I love this, is that when you do shift play, now it will only start the sequence when you press a key, and it will be transposed by the key that you press. So here was the original again, but in a new key. So just a really musical live performance ability there. And then let's try another one. And you can get tempo from the tap tempo, or if you're one of those people who like to turn the knobs, you can just go into the sequencer mode, and then you have real-time knob control over that as well. If you hold the arpeggiator button, it blinks, which means you're now in latch mode, so you can hold something and it'll stay. So hopefully this quick walkthrough of the Korg OPSIX altered FM synthesizer will get you as excited about diving into FM as I am. If you have any further questions about the OPSIX, please contact your Sweetwater sales engineer. My name is Daniel Fisher. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Click here for more videos like these, or go to sweetwater.com for all your music instrument and pro audio needs.